네, 안녕하십니까. 대외경제정책연구원 원장 김웅종입니다. Thank you very much for joining us through the online. And your presentation is very, very interesting. And so, you're talking about the productivity gap between after the 30 years of the German unification. But it can be easily applied to not only for the German unification, Korean possible unification, but also regional gap within the South Korea. And then very impressive. You are just not only focusing on the job, but also the productivity in regional basis. I have some questions from the online participants, but many of them has already been answered through your presentation. And so I'd like to raise some other questions from your presentation. First thing is that the last part of your presentation, on the conclusion part, you're talking about the East German areas now will face the demographic challenges. And so, your policy recommendation is something like the education to retain the human capital endowment. But if you think of the cases of the other countries like the Ireland, just education is not enough. If you just invest more education in the younger people, but if there is no opportunities for the creating job in that region, then there are a huge amount of the brain drain from the areas of the backward region to the prosperous areas. So just focusing on the education in new land, neue Landes, in German areas, just could accelerate the migration from the east to the west, especially for the high skilled. What is your opinion for that?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to meet you virtually at this conference. Thanks for this very good question. And indeed, this is an issue, but let us start with the fact that this migration did not stop, but it is now balanced. So we do not have more movers from East to West Germany. So this process came to an end. So the number of movers from West to East Germany is almost equal to the numbers of movers from East to West Germany. So what was happened in particular is that in the first years after unification, in particular, young and well-educated women left East Germany due to better employment opportunities in the western part of the country. And this amplified the demographic issue in East Germany. So as you might imagine, due to uncertainties and so forth, birth rates in East Germany collapsed after unification. And if now, in particular, well-educated young women left the country, then this amplifies demographic issues. So there might be a question what policy can do in this circumstances and these situations. And there might be the question whether policy can stop these migration flows. And to be honest, this is not possible at all. So these migration flows are driven by agglomeration forces, and we can put a lot of money to try to stop those flows. But at the end of the day, it probably will not stop. So what we can do is to set conditions to allow a smooth structural change. So these demographic issues are a specific sort of or specific problem of a general structural change that occurs. And what policy can do is to set a framework that allows a smooth structural change.
Thank you very much. 고맙습니다. 다음 질문은 question number 3. 이미 나왔던 질문인데요. 제가 그걸 다시 한번 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 한국은 현재 북한과 물리적, 경제적, 정치적으로뿐만 아니라 정서적으로도 단절되어 온 지 오래이기 때문에 쉽사리 통일이 가능하지는 않을 것으로 예상됩니다. 1990년 통일되기 전에 동독과 서독 국민들은 정서적으로 얼마나 큰 유대감을 나누고 얼마나 공통된 민족 정신을 향유하고 있었을까요? 당시 독일 국민들의 분위기와 독일에 대한 감정적 흐름이 어떠했는지 알고 싶습니다. 그리고 지금은 또 어떤지 지금 상황도 좀 말씀 좀 해주십시오.
Let me start with my own history. I was born in East Germany, so my parents too. And as far as I know from my parents, they were allowed to visit their relatives in West Germany. So in the 1950s, so this was after German division, but before the Berlin Wall, they were allowed to visit their relatives in Hamburg and Bavaria. And this stopped with the construction of the Berlin Wall in 1961. All these movements between East and West Germany came to an end, but family relationships did not break up. Yeah? So they still exist, and even with the process that was initiated by the West German Chancellor Willy Brandt in the early 1970s, a lot of negotiations started and allowing East Germans to visit their West German relatives and vice versa. So to be honest, there was still a complex application process for East Germans to get visa and passport, but it was possible in general. Yeah, so there was never a break up emotionally. Yeah? So having said this, there is still some issue that has gained some attraction in recent research, and this is linked to that East Germans are underrepresented in central functions, meaning that many important manager positions in important companies are held by West Germans. The same holds true for important positions in the justice system, in the army, in police forces, in ministries at the federal state level. So having said this, the case of our Chancellor Angela Merkel, who was born in Hamburg but grew up in East Germany, is a remarkable exception. Yeah? So this is an issue that obviously East Germans are underrepresented in these central functions. And an interesting side story might be, professional football in the first German soccer league, as you probably know, football is very important for Germans. And there is East German football teams are underrepresented in the first and second division in Germany. So the case of the team in Leipzig that is well known now because it's very successful and it takes place in the Champions League and other international contests is the very exception. So, and honestly speaking, this is not a real East German team as it is sponsored by an Austrian businessman who owns the Red Bull company, so producing soft drinks and etc. So this is one point that is discussed in the recent literature, and I guess it can produce or can generate some interesting findings on what East Germans emotionally think today, 30 years after unification, whether they can contribute to all their life, to be represented in central positions in the German government.
The last question is about the so-called unification cost, revisit of the unification cost. It dates back about the early 1990s that so many prestigious economists estimate the unification cost of Germany. And then maybe it occurred to me something like the cases of the Hans Berners-Inn or George Akerlof, American economist, who calculate the unification cost and also how to unite not only the two Germanys, but also other Central European countries. And then thinking of the unification cost, the estimated unification cost, and then the real unification cost after since the early 1990s. What do you think about the estimated statistics and then outcomes and the real statistics differ?
Oh, that's a very good question. To be honest, I don't know any study that tries to assess this difference between estimated and actual cost of unification. So what I think is that there was a lot of uncertainty regarding the real economic conditions in East Germany in the end of the 1980s, and which made it nearly impossible to have a clear picture on the current situation in East Germany. And what I can say is that the actual cost was really underestimated when we start unification process, which is also linked to the hard collapse even after the German unification in 1990 and 1991. So there was a dramatic collapse immediately after unification, which led to high unemployment rates and a sharp decline in production figures. And I guess this was not estimated by West German policymakers. So when the former Chancellor Helmut Kohl started negotiations with the East German government about unification, so he always talked about flowering landscapes. Yeah, so if we set up market conditions in East Germany and allow market powers to work, then everything will be fine. Unfortunately, there was a lot of transition. It was a hard shock in East Germany, and it took a lot of time to renew East German economy. And as I mentioned in my presentation, there is still a gap in terms of productivity that amounts to approximately 20 percentage points. And this convergence process slowed down. And it's an interesting topic for research, what explains this remaining productivity gap. So, to be honest, unfortunately, I do not have a current number that it explains the difference between estimated and actual cost. So what I can say, or what I argue, is that it was truly underestimated.
Right. Thank you very much for your very excellent presentation and also the answers. I really hope that we have more opportunities to talk about these issues, not only these issues, but also other many issues about the economic areas. Thank you very much for joining us today. 감사합니다.
Thanks a lot for the invitation.